Okay, let me first introduce myself. I'm Mahalakshmi Parthasarathi. I am based in Bangalore and some months in Berlin. I do keep traveling back and forth. Um, I have been in the developmental sector for 25 years now. Seems pretty long time back. When I started in the 90s, I was, I have been professionally trained as an environmentalist. And I started working with the not-for-profit sector. Day one, it was a very conscious effort to ensure that, I wanted to understand India from, the perspective that was not really very, how do I say? I mean, that was a perspective that in 90s for sure did not really have too much of bandwidth or visibility, or it was not really a part of conversations regularly. And so when I started work, especially on mining issues. I mean, mining was something that was very interesting, because I realized that there was a whole community. You have the forests, you have the forest dwellers, and you have the minerals. These are all the three things that kind of, overlap each other. So, and I realized that there is something, what I would say is impacting the community, the traditional dwellers there. And there were a lot of, how do I put this now, unjust practices that were happening. So we kind of started talking to people to see how we can equip them with the understanding that how environmental, safeguards that are available in the law, the constitution, the legal standards, and it's all very clear, the regulatory mechanisms, as we call it. So we just started talking to people. We built a network. I was a part of a network called Mines, Minerals and People. And we kind of had mining impacted communities across India. Even if you take a small, issue, the kind of depth that one can go into, the breadth that one can go into, and the kind of community one can build, the interdisciplinary community that one can build, to solve this whole issue is something. It's very exciting and it's very interesting. And technology obviously, plays a huge role. There is no denying that. We put together a few things, which again will just give an idea on what kind of issues that we are talking. It's a glimpse of what is possible, what are the needs that needs to be tackled. I would say what we're trying to do here, it's very clear that I'm trying to build in a real-time connect. What are the available resources? What are the requirements of the masses? Yes, I'm going to be seeing this. Broadly, one can look at the United Nations, the Sustainable Developmental Goals, the 17 goals that we have. It more or less encompasses everything that everybody wants to do at some point of time. They have kind of, I think one should definitely look into their website and see how best that, people can actually look and fit in their work into these 17 goals. That's kind of, would be simpler when you're talking about people, we're talking about planet, we're talking about the prosperity, we're talking about peace, they're talking about partnerships. So this kind of encompasses what everybody of us wants to do. Having said that, I would also want to understand, real-time things, what happens on ground. Like, we can see people here even now have serious challenges when it comes to, linking up, even for talking. Obviously the bandwidth is not there. So how do you ensure that you kind of bypass the challenges that technology available poses as on date, to ensure that you bring people into these conversations who are challenged by, lack of digital access, so as to say, lack of internet access. So these are conversations that we would want to have with students. We would because these are also people who innovate. These are also people who come with a different perspective. Like, as we say, gendered perspective is important, like, taking a perspective when you're planning a city of a woman. How many of the cities that are being planned in India today take in a gendered perspective? Where is a woman giving her input, saying that, hey, I'm a woman, these are my needs, and this is something that needs to be incorporated into urban civic planning? Is that even happening? That is not even a thought. But this is something that we would want to have conversations about. So this is what I'm talking about: expanding the reach of existing product and services. We are making it as inclusive as possible. So this is broadly put. I know it's kind of too much to take in. I appreciate that. I mean, I would not even want to try and understand everything, but I will try and give you glimpses of things that are already happening in the ecosystem. Probably that will spark your enthusiasm, get you to understand what are happening in small pockets, make that as pilot studies, how you can expand their reach, or if you would want to give your own qualitative input and try and make it larger, scale it, or don't scale it, make it in silos, very, very diverse. I mean, probably what is working in a area will not work in a mountain area, whatever. I'm just saying that. But the whole idea is to today to have conversations about the various things that are happening in our diverse and rich country. Yeah, I mean, broadly, this is what we have come across. If you have any additional thematic areas, do include this. We're talking about waste management, we're talking about agriculture. Sustainable agriculture is something that I would add here. Food, again, wholesome food, nutritious food, accessibility to good food to people, across education, employability skills. We are looking at accessibility. Again, we have physically challenged people. We need to, when we are talking about planning, we would want people, to have access. We are looking at women's safety. We're looking at environmental issues, disaster management. We are looking at, again, safety. I mean, safety seems to be across the theme for women, for children in various, areas. We're looking at healthcare. Healthcare, again, I'm focusing probably more on the community healthcare aspect of it, especially now that we have faced just kind of, COVID is so fresh in our, it's still there. I mean, you can't really deny that it's over, really, but COVID has happened, and how we can kind of, prep ourselves. And there are going to be more things that with climate change and so many things that are very, very obvious that's happening. You can't deny that we are up for something else that may crop up soon. So we have to be prepared as a community on how to tackle these things, how information can be disseminated, how well prepared we are to ensure that these we are able to face these challenges, whatever it is. Wildlife, again, I mean, very, very important as a topic, because there are protected areas, but then most of our protected areas in India are under threat one way or the other. It could be roads, it could be railways, it could be mining. But having said that, you can't really deny that you need all these three. I mean, that's definitively, we all use, public transport, we need minerals, we all use phones, we all, travel. You can't really deny. But how do you mitigate, how do you kind of ensure, how do you get people to kind of, ensuring that an elephant is not run over by the railways? It's as simple as that. Everybody would have seen that horrific images. I mean, it's kind of stays in my mind even now. I mean, so many elephants, baby elephants, they want to cross over. How do you ensure that these things don't happen? How do you kind of get, and it will only happen if there's a coordination, ground level coordination happens with, there are a lot of people coming together to come out with solutions. Urban civic issues. Bangalore, I mean, I don't know how many of you are from Bangalore. I know Bangalore is flooded, sadly, because the rains have been incessant, and the more important, pertinent thing is the Rajakalways, as we call it, the stormwater drains are all blocked because many people have built buildings on it. So you can't really have the water flowing over, in any metro, we have water systems. It could be rivers, it could be lakes, it could be smaller kuntes, as we call in Kannada. Kere and Kunte. Kere is the lake and the Kunte is the smaller lake body. And then it kind of flows into a drain. If it can, water always has this downstream, this whole linkages are very well mapped. Most of the times, if there are blockages happening, water will find its way, it's very, very, so you have, areas that get flooded. Chennai as a city, you must all be aware. I mean, every time it gets flooded, it's on level with the sea. Don't really have anywhere to flow or spill over. So you really need to figure out. And the rains have become a little unpredictable. We've realized that in Bangalore, everybody I meet, oh, we never had rains like this. Oh, it's almost like a cloud burst. I mean, I've been hearing about this so often. In fact, today on my WhatsApp, a friend of mine shared that they're actually looking out for rafts to rescue 400 people who are stuck in a building in Bangalore. This is today. I mean, you can imagine the chaos that it is causing. There are sadly, lives that are lost. There are, resources that are lost. I personally have, been supporting a group of people who, elderly pensioners who have bought a layout, sites in a layout, have built homes. This is a BDA approved layout. But then that BDA approved layout every time gets, flooded. The reason is the Rajakalwe, the stormwater drain where the water is supposed to flow from the other side is blocked. So sadly, they are in a lower gradient. So the water kind of comes here. And these are pensioners who have spent their life savings, and they don't really have any other option but to stay on. And you're not going to find people who are going to end up buying their homes. So, it's a tough thing. You are in your 70s and 80s and you're growing old. You have spent your life's resources and you're staying in a city, and every month, year, you're dreading the fact that you may get flooded again. It is not at all a good thing, good feeling. I'm going to be now probably, these are a list of common problems that I have listed. But I would definitely want to hear, especially from the students and, whoever definitely are willing to pitch in. Like waste, obviously, in our cities. I mean, I think it's some 63 million tons. I mean, I'm just looking out with, all the websites. Sahas actually mentions that India is generating 63 million tons of waste. And by 2050, they're looking at 3.4 billion tons per year. And that's like, I don't even know how many zeros that is. That's huge. And we have civic bodies, like in Bengaluru, we have the Brihat Bengaluru Mahanagarpalike. The same with, urban bodies, the metros that we are having. Where is, I still don't see a all-encompassing comprehensive solution where the different, stakeholders, it could be the waste generators, it could be the people who are trying to, solve this problem, being a part of this equation, all kind of come together and put forth whatever is the real-time information. So there is a requirement for coordination on a broader scale. This is something that free cycling. I mean, there are many things that one can actually kind of look at free cycling, upcycling, giving it to others to share. Earlier on, I think during our grandparents' times and everything, there was a pretty easy access. I mean, whatever people did not want to use, used to pass on to their helps, to people, their relatives who could not afford. I mean, it was a very clear chain. Hardly anything was thrown away. But I don't see that happening. I mean, and clothes, for example, I mean, most of us have gotten into buying clothes. I mean, all of us, it's easily accessible, cheaper quality is available. So somewhere there's this whole balance that needs to be created. Handlooms, for example, they are slow fashion. They're not fast fashion. the availability of fast fashion has also made waste a huge problem. There is no denying that. So how can you ensure the clothes that are discarded kind of get back into the upcycled, chain? How do you do this? So we have listed out, stakeholders here. Anybody who would want to give in inputs on what do you think should be done? I would love to hear from you. I've been talking for a long time now. I
Ma'am.
normally don't do.
Actually,
Yeah.
I wanted to share something regarding the waste
Yeah.
management.
Mhm.
Ma'am, I was personally a member in a group called Children's Movement for Civic Awareness, CMCA, the name of the organization.
Correct. Of course, CMCA, it's a very well known. Yes.
So I had been a civic volunteer for around 3 to 4 years.
Mhm.
So
And what the intervention they did?
yes, ma'am. So what we were trying to do is wherever we used to see, garbage is thrown without any proper segregation or any place where it was not supposed to thrown. Ma'am, nowadays we see wherever it's written you will be fined for throwing garbage. There you see a bigger lump of garbages. It is pretty
Correct.
hilarious, but people don't take it pretty seriously. So we were trying to put a word forward to the government to do something of a privatization for this because we are overly dependent on the government bodies like BVMP to carry out operations to reduce improper segregation of waste and also to recycle waste. So we were thinking
Mhm.
in many states, electricity is provided by privatized bodies. So why can't we
Mm.
have privatized bodies to recycle the waste and take up the responsibility of waste
Okay,
management?
okay, okay. See, there are, okay, that's exactly. Now, like Sahas, the NGO that I've mentioned here, or Hasirudala, there are NGOs, okay. See, this is exactly what I'm trying to say now. You have people, the problem spots, the hot, black spots that you would want to clean. So how do you ensure you get a Sahas, you get a Hasirudala to ensure? I'm just saying in Bangalore there could be every city will have it. I mean, I'm just kind of, I've given a few names. I can definitely check. There are, lists of NGOs that are doing this. How do you make this connectivity? Now, there are area sabhas according to the urban civic, I mean, the Metropolitan Act, wherever, according to 74th Amendment, every ward will have an area sabha, as they call it. So, if an area sabha can coordinate for a distributed waste collection center, and you have a Sahas or a Hasirudala and anybody else, in any other metro kind of willing to pick it up and responsibly dispose it, and it doesn't get into a landfill. If these linkages, if there is something that can be created, see, Sahas will have an app. It is just a matter of connecting regular people to the app. I mean, it is happening in pockets. Sahas is doing, I mean, but if we would want obviously everybody to be a part of it. And it's a value chain. Like as you rightly said, it generates money. There are people who actually see value, like bottles. But in Germany, it's a very interesting concept. Nobody kind of every waste everything gets disposed responsibly here. Bottles, interestingly, everywhere people actually tend to keep it out. There are people who actually collect bottles and make money, and it's huge money, trust me. There are people every day go around, you just take the metro, I mean the U-Bahn and the S-Bahn, and people actually collect. I mean, it's so beautifully done. It's just response. It's you're trying to put two and two things together where people are also making money, people understand the value of waste, and at the same time you're being a responsible citizen. Wonderful, that's good to know. So this is the linkages that I'm trying to create. Or bulk, there are these bulk generators, like a huge apartment, you have thousands, 600,000, I mean, in urban metros. How can you get them? They all have this, rooms that are built, everything gets dumped. Everybody says that we segregate, but, hardly, you have definitely a huge issue. There are still people who keep mixing it. See, the moment you mix organic waste into something that is inorganic, the whole thing goes down the drain. So how do you ensure that doesn't happen? So to ensure the quality of the waste that is being collected is also important. So you kind of reject the waste, so that's also important. If you can create technology kind of linkages to ensure that the collection of the waste happens properly. And it can happen at household level, it can happen at the auto rickshaws or the smaller vehicles that come and collect it and take it to a bigger one, or it can happen at various levels. So this is something, the linkages that needs to be created. We are also looking at getting in policy level interventions. How can policy level interventions be part of it? Like, ensuring your chips packets we were discussing, Rashmi. Chips packets are just not going to go anywhere 700 years down the line, 800 years down the line. It's going to be there. Frankly, it's a one policy can happen, policy changes can happen, provided there is some kind of an advocacy, some kind of a lobbying, where a lot of people kind of come together and say, hey, this is the right thing to do and this is what we would want to do. The reason why we want to do is, I don't want to be allowing my children to kind of go through this nonsense, of whatever the waste that you are generating, your children are going to be ending up cleaning it. It's not a nice thing. So somewhere, that kind of how you can get people to rally for the right things, this is something that you would want to do. Yeah, you can go probably. Yes, Praful, go ahead.
So this is something that I was working on, black soldier fly larvae cultivation. So this is a form of wet waste management. So you grow maggots basically, which eat the wet waste, and then the maggots itself are used as feed for chickens and pigs. And the whichever waste was there, that will be turned into a very good compost. So
Absolutely.
I was working on that on my first year, but I had some issues.
Now, how do I know where do I get these maggots? Where do I know how do I make it chicken feed? Are there, you need to build linkages.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like, there are a lot of people who have worked on these microorganisms. They want to clean up lakes. They want to, even get waste to biodegrade by using microbes. Where do I get it? I don't have information. So if I'm talking, I am looking at it like a citizen, a common citizen who's probably, too engrossed in, survival and, getting, whatever, to have quick access to information like this. And also it's important to make it, see, if you make it easy for me, delivery or see, in India, the main challenge is, I've seen so many people say that I would want to do the right thing, provided somebody, picks it up, drops it somewhere. That whole linkages, if you are able to connect, that is something will actually yield a lot of results. That's, if you are able to earmark, if you have a map of the chicken farms or, the poultries that are willing to take in these maggots at quick access, how do you do this? Real-time monitoring, saying that, okay, this is already completed. Today you can go, and because these are all, has to happen on a regular basis. If you can keep on, having real-time feed that is happening, given to people, and this goes on continuously, this will be a fantastic app to work on. Yeah, if you can go for the next one. Agriculture. Okay, you've come here. Agriculture is another area that I have realized that, Praful has highlighted again through mushroom cultivation. It's more or less the same when we are looking at small farmers. Small farmers, there are many today I know are wanting to try the pesticide free. I'm going to be calling it the pesticide free agriculture. But then you don't really people who are actually trying to do correctly, organically, but they don't have idea for certification. It'll be nice to have them all together. It'll also help in scaling. Like Praful highlighted that, thing where supply may not always be possible. If I'm a small time farmer, every time I may not be able to supply you the coriander that I may have, have agreed to give. So if there are people who kind of fill in, so you ensure there is a whole cyclical rotation around, round robin thing. So the supply doesn't stop. At the same time, this whole lot of small time farmers who are connected by technology also get, how do I say this, credibility in building a farm to table brand. It could happen through crowd farming. I mean, I would want to invest, like, I don't have millions to invest, but I definitely have some lakhs. If I am able to get some crowd farming done, in Berlin, I own a couple of mango trees through crowd farming. I'm very proud to say that. Every time, okay, what do you do? What do you have in Berlin? Oh, some mango trees. But that's something that I would want to do something like this in India. There are, things that are happening in Bangalore where you can rent a plot of land, have your own agriculture. There are city dwellers who go and putter around. Eventually, they are assured of their weekly vegetables, radishes, whatever that they decide. So it's a nice thing where, they are also connected back to nature. So how you can ensure that this happens on a larger scale? Ensure that you take into account land that is lying fallow, in villages, and these villagers would have migrated to the cities in search of jobs. How do you ensure that these lands get used? There is a reverse migration where there is a sustainable livelihood that is generated. I mean, COVID, and it becomes so important now, especially because after COVID, we've realized that if, God forbid, if something like that again happens, I mean, you had so many people leaving the cities overnight. I mean, with literally nothing. I mean, zilch resources. I mean, this is something that one did not foresee at all. I mean, 6 months ago, before COVID struck, I mean, where were we even in that thought process? So if you're able to create security here in their, villages, in their, tier 2, tier 3 towns, nothing like it. Why would I want to even come, spend so much of money? Even now, with remote work being possible, there are many people who are preferring to stay back in smaller towns because the monthly expenses is less. They get a better quality of life, the kind of money that they earn. There are, so if you can try and make this happen for agriculture also. These are, and supply chain management. I mean, this is something, cropping patterns, in India, I've realized that today I have farmers I'm just giving a random example. I have planted vanilla and I have made lakhs today. Somebody else sees me, okay, vanilla, money, everybody goes vanilla. Next time, obviously, with too much supply, the demand is not going to be as much, right? So is there a app that will tell me exactly the cropping pattern? Is there an app that actually helps people understand what is the demand, what is the supply that can be created, what is the cropping pattern? You start there. So if there is some talk that kind of begins there, you don't have people, everybody, you must have all seen these tomatoes, being thrown, onions getting rotting away because it's too much of supply. Is there a thought where you can, have those conversations built in? There will be apps, probably, you also need to also bring that into conversation. So you just have to sit down and think, how do you ensure conversations happen with farmers who don't end up, all putting the same thing, or or nothing. Some years I've realized that one crop just doesn't get planted. I mean, it just kind of goes away. So is it possible, or you say that, okay, this is something that people are not wanting to do, but yes, there is space. If you plant this, you are assured of returns like this. Then, they are not so dependent on the consumer fluctuations. See, the whole thing today is the support price, the whole minimum support price, what we saw people, farmers sitting there, is also happening because it's, there are one too many people selling the same thing. If you are already having the market for things that are not getting cropped, I mean, these are conversations that you would want to build. So it's done scientifically and it's done in an inclusive manner. If you can go to the next one, please. Yeah, this is the Delhi smog example. I mean, when we're talking food, we're talking agriculture, we're talking waste. It's a triangle that kind of crops up. This was a conversation that me and Rashmi had, and I thought it'll be a good thing to put it here. Delhi, November, December. I mean, I don't know how many of you live in and around Delhi, Haryana, the whole belt where it's going to be very tough for you to breathe in November and December when the rice stubs get, burnt. There are stubs available that needs to be disposed of. It's too expensive to transport them, so people end up, burning them. All this happened. Why? Because it is green revolution. Everybody, got this chance to get this whole rice planted and everything. But COVID, interestingly, has made it possible that instead of, transplantation of rice, they were actually directly planting it into the, fields, or there are these technologies like the happy seed where you can still plant it even with the stubs in the ground. There are various ways. How do you ensure linkages of, transport? There are people who may want to use these stubs for various things. How to create linkages so that these stubs are being picked up at the right time during that very crucial time interval, so that the next, the farmers can actually put the next year's crops in there. So if you are able to manage the time, there's a huge demand. You will have a lot of people who would want to use the stubs, who are transporters, and these farmers who actually have the stubs to dispose of. So this is something, it's very, very workable. Next one. And you also have solving the, pollution problem, so as to say. Food, again, we are looking at cold chain access. This is a problem that we are looking at various levels. We are looking at, hygiene, the certification. Yes, everything. Again, information. 1 minute, just a minute. Yeah, information that's already available. How do you ensure subsidies are available? I'm also talking, when I'm talking food, we're also looking at fishers. I mean, this is something that I have not put in here. Fisher folk. There are many, many subsidies that the government gives. But how are these subsidies being used? No real-time data is available. There are about 14 or 15 subsidies. A friend of mine is working on that. She has a list of subsidies, but nobody really knows the end result. The idea is, how do you insurance schemes? You have fisher people who go out into the sea and they need to come back, and if worst case scenario happens, how many are actually making use of it? There is no real-time data available. If you can ensure technology kind of monitors this, the schemes that are available, how many are taking, can it be registered? Is there information available centralized? Today it isn't. You're looking at cold chain access. This is a very important supply chain logistics that we are looking at. There are various cold chains that are available, private cold chains, government subsidized ones, totally, utterly government ones. How do you ensure people get into these cold chains? Food doesn't go waste. Again, you have to ensure if this can become a part of your conversation, the previous conversation, what I was saying, right from cropping pattern to getting it to the consumer. Cold chain also is a process. This whole supply chain logistics, if you can ensure that this happens, this is something that's very, very crucial. Next one, please. And sorry, can you please go back? I'm just talking about very interesting references here. Akshay Kalpa is free-ranging cows. They have these milk, pasteurized, non-pasteurized milk. They actually give. They are looking at cows grazing on pesticide-free grasses. We are looking at distribution. Again, you have A2 milk that is being propounded as the new, Indian indigenous breed. How do you ensure that this goes on a larger scale? How can you scale it up? Or how can you make the traditional dairy to also kind of adopt this? This is something, it's a very interesting linkage that one can start having conversations with. Traditional health foods. I mean, we have people who are talking about traditional health foods. If you can also kind of ensure there is talk about allopaths, the traditional healers, the Ayurvedic practitioners. I mean, if you can have an app that talks about all this, connects them together, and of course the consumer. That's something that's very, very interesting. Yeah, the next one. Environment. Okay, this is, I mean, how many of us have stayed in cities? How many of us are scared to buy a plot? I mean, in Bangalore, I know of many people who have bought plots, and their plots have turned out to be lake beds, have turned out to be Rajakalways, have turned out to be designated wasteland, Gomara as they call it, where government land, where you can't really build your, land, and it's, you put in crores, people have disappeared. It's something very important. If there is a available map, an interactive map, real-time map available for all the metros on ensuring where the drainage patterns, where the lakes are there. Lakes, when I mean lakes, please understand, today there are only lake beds. Nobody really understands that there is no water body so as to. Why? Because drains have been blocked in spaces. So today you may see it as a wasteland, but tomorrow when there is a downpour, it's all going to get underwater because it's a typical gradient. You can't deny it. So if you create a database, a readily accessible database where people know of it, or there are databases that are already available, how do you take these databases to people? That's an important thing. I mean, how do you ensure there is an app that links all the 1.5 crore people in Bangalore to this database? All 1.5 crore may not be your, people who would want to buy, but they would want to rent. They would want to use it for some other official purposes. Why would I want to, spend good money, hard-earned money in buying a place or renting a place, which may end up getting flooded? Today, RMG eco space, I mean, half the thing is getting, the whole road is flooded. Why would you want to do that? So if you have a app that will ensure that I know for a fact that I'm not, you can also talk about, drainage patterns. It's a well-mapped one. It's already available. So you need to, they're all available in silos. If I were you, if I had the time, I would put all of this together for a common person who's interested to invest, to rent, to use it for any other purposes. Easily available. I need to know, or, procedural aspects, there are so many things that people don't really know. Water harvesting. How many of us know water harvesting or even electricity generation? Solar is getting into, there are schemes that are available in cities. If you are putting those solar, panels on in your houses, you can actually refeed it back to the grid. How many of us do it? None of us do it. And sun, come on. I mean, in Germany with hardly 3 months of sunlight there, everybody has it. And in India, we hardly see it. I mean, you at least have 7 months of sunlight. Thanks, Gautam. Yeah. But what I'm also trying to say here is the environment holds a huge database of migratory birds. How many of us know how many come to Bangalore? Or how many come to Delhi, how many come to Mumbai? If you can have, it's very important because this also would mean you're saving lakes. They also come to water bodies. This will feed into, lake beds not getting encroached. They may be seasonal rivers that they come to. They may have seasonal water bodies that they kind of hang out. You need to kind of map that if that is available. There are wildlife experts, there are bird experts you can talk to. You can, put the 2 and 2 together. The next one, please. And you have, references. I've given Bengaluru Prajavedike, the Nama Bengaluru Foundation. You have got Citizens Action Forum. These are all people in the city. In Bangalore, I have given the same in Mumbai. I can come up with a few names. You can always reach out to me for anything. We can always have a talk. The idea is you need to kind of start talking to people who are working in a small scale and get them connected and get common people who will benefit with this kind of detailed knowledge, access to knowledge. Next one. Women's safety, again, Vimochana is an organization that I have put. The police themselves are doing a lot in this work. Again, how many of the women, especially who have suffered domestic violence, have the guts or the gumption or the means to go to the police station or to go to an NGO that will help them get legal advice, help them tackle with the immediate need for survival? How many of us do it? So how do you ensure that this is something that can be worked upon. It could be a number, it could be a helpline, it could be something that's well known. I mean, I know of, thoughts already there. How do you broad base this? Access to resources, like I was saying, laptops, it could be, Ananya only gives laptops to women. Again, it is a thought that we wanted digital access. We have been very focused on giving it to women. We would love to see more women getting into these conversations. So we are looking at first generation learners. We are looking at particularly young women who can get into these conversations. How do you tie up these things together? There are many companies that may want to donate. How do you put two and two together? So this is something very, very, nobody does it. I mean, today I at Ananya struggle, we end up buying laptops. If you are giving me access to companies who are donating laptops, good laptops, 7th generation, definitely, I will give you the students who can, there are direct linkages that can be set up. This is something very doable. Next one in, please. Employability skills, again, NetAcad, for example, Thinkubator itself, has, gives access free resources, fantastic resources. How many students, even in the engineering sector, know of these resources? I would want to connect all the students, to these resources that are available. We're trying to do that. We are ourselves an academy with under NetAcad. Hopefully that, we'll try and reach more and more people. If you are getting me an app, I mean, I would love to, track, validate, verify who are doing this, to ensure that everybody in the college can, become a part of these conversations. Most of the times what happens is, if I go to a college, it's a very bureaucratic process. I mean, if I have to get to a profile, I need to go through the, the director, the principal. While they would want to do it, they are also doing 100 other things. So by the time I get to profile in a college, it's going to be, a long, chain. So the profile may not really get it on time. So if you're able to create an app which will say, hey, all the engineering students who are interested to get free resources, training resources for employability skills, log on to this app. Get me an Ananya app. I would love to have access to it. This is something that, we're trying to pitch in. This is, we're looking at tier 2 and tier 3 cities, aspirational districts. We're looking at dropouts. There are many dropouts, youth who would want to get back into education. There are NGOs that are working with youth dropouts. So get them into the conversation. We are looking, we have NGOs that are into the space of upskilling. We have NGOs that give internships. We have NGOs that give, companies that give, NASCOM Foundation itself has got so many opportunities. I mean, I would love to take it to more and more people. This is something that we are good at. But if we have an app that will kind of help us, validate, understand who's doing what at all points of time, nothing like it. And it has to have a ease of access to the student. That's where I come from. Ananya and Headstream, that's where I have mentioned. The next one, please. Special needs accessibility. Again, I have listed out a few things. I'm just giving you an example. Accessibility to public utilities. I mean, this is something that every person with special needs, physical disability, for example, needs to know. I have seen buildings even meant for people with physical challenges having access issues. I mean, they need to climb stairs. It's impossible. So if you have a map, a ready map, every time I need to go, I can go there, understand whether it has complete access, 50% access, access only to the first floor, whatever it is. If there is clarity, if there is information that's given to people saying, they will not waste time doing it, or they will get a person to help who can, help them, come with them, accompany them to get things done. It'll save everybody's time. It'll also get their work done. Same with, we're looking at mental health. I mean, mental health is such a sensitive topic. It's become so I mean, especially post-COVID, I mean, I've seen people deal with, I mean, coming back to, real life where they're interacting with people. I can see there are so many challenges that people are facing. This 2 years has, 2.5 years has taken away a lot of social skills that people had acquired. I mean, especially with young kids who have, had just started and were pulled out of the system. They had, I think all of you appreciate that all the village schools were totally shut for 2 years. There was nothing that was happening in these, schools. At least in, cities where the upper, where we're looking at an ICSE or above, you had some kind of an interaction online. But that did not happen. So, mental health has definitely taken a beating. So if you can create an app only solely for, Himanshu's schools, what he's talking about, if schools have shut down, if we can look at starting with that, if we can talk, children get bullied, they have needs to be spoken about, if that can be a part of the conversation. Next one, please. Healthcare again. We are looking at community health, like I said. We are looking at community health access in Bangalore, and again, or in a remote village. What is the nearest hospital with amenities? Is something that I would want to know. At any point of time, say if I'm traveling, I would want to have an app that shows, some information and a person whom I can connect. It's important. See, you have these Just Dial and all of these apps, but it gives you a board number. It doesn't really work. What I would want is a person who actually picks up the phone, answers, and hey, say, get the person, patient here. Or, come, yes, we have this kind of help. Yes, we have an MRI. We have a, ultrasound. Actual real-time information is given. That's crucial. Children with mental health, there are, kids, parents who have no clue, severe autism. I mean, you don't really know what, and interventions needs to start early. Intervention needs to be lifetime. So there has to be easy access to medical, health professionals. Thanks, Hemant. Yeah. So what I'm trying, elderly, dementia, Alzheimer's, again, long-term care, palliative care. How do you ensure you bring all these people into the conversation? We can always have stakeholders. We can have in-detailed conversations on that. The next one, please. I know I would want to wrap it up. Children, I think I have kind of covered it earlier, but we definitely would want, one important thing I would want to mention is children get lost in our country. Children are not found in our country. I've met so many people, mothers who still say that I've lost my child, 10 years ago. I don't know where he or she is. It's such a sad thing. I would definitely want a database where everybody, a children lost, a children, I kind of go and put it on there. A children found, I put it on the database. Children lost, I put it on the database. Centralized database, even today. Same thing, a centralized database with people with Alzheimer's, elderly people with dementia who get lost, who walk out. Sadly, if the person has passed away, bodies found. There are many bodies, unidentified bodies that get cremated eventually. Of course, there's a process to it, but it'll also give closure to the family. They're all people who have been loved, who've, bad things have happened. So somewhere, if this kind of thought can come in. Next one, please. Wildlife. Now, this is something I definitely have a very, very minute, observations that we would want in Bangalore, people for animals in Bangalore. We would want to have an app that will kind of get every of our volunteers who would want to volunteer about, telling a wildlife, an animal or a bird in distress, tell us. We would want to know people who are able to go and rescue it, who are able to foster it for overnight, whatever it is, or, for 10 days, 15 days. If you have people, a community which can be linked, there are, PFA has a list of people that we will help you reach out to. If they can all be brought under an app, given real-time information, this is something that we would love to know. And, in Bangalore, it's such a big place. I'm just giving you an example. The same with Delhi, the same, we have a PFA in Delhi, we have PFA in Mumbai. If an app can kind of tell me if there is a bird in north of the city, who would be the nearest volunteer, it's something like your Uber app, which will ensure that the person nearest to the animal that needs to be rescued can go in real time. So that, and also update that once person rescues it, it says, okay, animal rescued, so that the other people don't make that trip. We've had people many times, 3 people going to a place, sometimes nobody landing up. We would want this to happen. Sadly, the animal would have passed on. So this is pets, the same thing for pets. There are abandoned pets, there are pets that actually get lost. So if there is a central repository, and how do you kind of ensure that all of this kind of comes into conversation? Next one, please. Virtual assistants, again, I would just say understanding. See, there are so many internship opportunities that are available. Why I would want to, highlight this is there are many kids who come to us saying, "Hey, I have never gotten an internship," which I think is a very strange thing, because online, if I search, I see remote work, I see on internship opportunities. So why are they not meeting? And I'm talking about a student with a decent CGPA. It's not even like, so it should have worked technically, but it isn't happening. So how do you actually, where is that missing link? It'll only come after you have conversations with both, saying that, is it the time that is not overlapping? What is the, thing that kind of needs to overlap for this to click? So somewhere that app that kind of ties up all of this together. Next one, please. In that the previous one, I mean, it's also important for senior citizens. There are many senior citizens now with falling rate of interest, and the banks are actually looking out for supplemental income, even post retirement. So this is an app that will actually help them kind of look for opportunities that they can do remotely, or they can, ease of work. I would definitely want, I'm not going to have an elderly person doing heavy lifting. So if you can also create an ecosystem where people understand. The next one. I think we more or less covered everything. The civic issues I have spoken about in the previous ones. The lake bed, it could be the forest. Every tree in the city is tagged. Public transport, last mile connectivity. It also gets linked up to the women's safety issue. So what kind of comes if I go from point A to point B? What are the different modes of transport that are available easily, real-time tracking? If that's an app that one can think of, one can work with RWAs, one can look at safety nets to be created. There are many RWAs who are even willing to do these volunteering policing to young people who would want to get home. You can bring in citizens' participation also. I think that kind of covers everything. Yeah. Any questions?
Actually, we had a question which was asked prior to the session, ma'am. So I would just like to share it with you.
Mm-hmm.
So it was from Himanshu. So the question says, what are the various methods to measure the impact of social work? How to maintain a proper cash flow when you're working in rural India with small margins and high volatility? Yeah, so that was the question asked from.
Okay, let me take the first question. What was it again? I'll just take it in parts.
Yes, ma'am. I'll say it in part by part. So the first question says, what are the various methods to measure the impact of social work?
Now that is, I think, frankly, it has to be the stakeholders who themselves have to set the parameters. Like, I mean, if I'm just looking at the wildlife part of it, I'm going to give you an example. The thing that PFA will say, I am without an app, without technology assisting me today, I'm rescuing 3,000 animals per year. Is there a qualitative improvement from in quantitative improvement in terms of 3,000 becoming 5,000? That could be a parameter. It has to be obviously set in tandem with the stakeholders. It can't, and every parameter, every issue that one needs to tackle with or is trying to tackle will have different parameters. The stakeholders, everybody has to kind of pitch in and say, and every parameter has to kind of also be able to be validated. I mean, I can't, why I'm saying 3,000, I know exactly because those are the numbers that PFA is giving. There has to be some kind of a validation. I can't just off the cuff say, hey, I know I may, this whole 63,000 tons of waste per year today, 1 million tons. This is something known in India. So this is validated. So how do you need to get players who know real-time information, and that whole parameters needs to be, decided in, they have to participate. It's as simple as that. And there has to be a quantitative improvement and qualitative also. Qualitative, how, like now PFA, wildlife rescue. If I had rescued that animal in distress in 10 minutes, the cortisol in its blood would be definitely lower. If I'm rescuing the animal after an hour, after 3 days, definitely worse condition. So it's a qualitative improvement. So if your app ensures that I reach the animal faster, I would definitely say that, hey, this is definitely, the real saying from the time it is reported, from to its rescue. I'm looking at the qualitative part of it. So you're obviously going to look at the qualitative, you're going to look at the quantitative.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. I'll just read out the second part of the question. It says, how to maintain a proper cash flow when you're working in rural India with small margins and high volatility. So specifically mentioning about small margins and high volatility.
Okay, now this is a business, question. But having said that, I think where I'm coming from, all the things that I have said has a very, very important social component to it. I think you need to have, it's important that you work on something that you feel very, very strongly about. If some animals are something that you like, or, you would want to make a difference with people who are elderly, you start with that. Or rural areas, if you're looking at smaller margins, you can look at tapping into CSR funds. You can look at kind of putting this as a social a society or a not-for-profit trust, a charitable trust, try and get funds. Or if you have an angel investor like Himanshu, who is willing to say if it's a company and if they're trying to do that, you definitely need to have a proper business proposal out, a proper pitch out, and then try and get some money in. You can't really obviously not depend on the stakeholders. See, most of the stakeholders in this conversation that we've had hardly are in any position to pay. It is charitable work. There is no denying that to begin with. Having said that, probably after you have a plan in place where after 3 to 5 years, you try and become as sustainable, as independent as possible. But I think you would need, I wouldn't even call it seed money. I would just say an investment, endowment who is willing to start with. Or look at government. There are, government has definite resources where they are wanting people to bring in technology into these various areas. You can definitely approach the government. These are gaps that the government is facing. They would definitely find resources. You should definitely have the government in conversation with. And you're not going to get a poor farmer who's trying to struggle, to make ends meet to kind of invest in this. It won't. It's not even a logical business proposition, if you ask me. I would look at resources elsewhere. I would look at somebody who's the end benefactor. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We have the next question on chat from Praful.
Praful, do you want to say this?
Yes, sure, ma'am. So when we were trying to get contacts of mushroom farmers in Mangalore or even in Bangalore also. We had difficulty initially, but then we asked the government institutions, IIHR, KVKs and all, and even they were not willing to give us that information.
Why? Why?
They said that it was a privacy issue, but we also talked to some other, government officials also. They were like, these people are too lazy to give it, even though they have it. Uh, so I was wondering.
Did you get it? You didn't get it.
No, ma'am. So I was wondering how to actually go about getting the.
Have you written to them, Praful?
Written? I'm sorry.
Proper. Have you given a request in writing?
Like we had visited them personally, and
It won't work. Won't work. Give it to
Okay.
them in. Go to the district magistrate. Tell them that we're trying to do an app that will help small-time farmers. Who's your district magistrate there?
I'm not very sure.
Figure it out. Go talk
Yes.
to them and also send me a mail. I'll try and connect you to people. You need to give me
Sure.
exact geographical area that you're looking at. I will definitely try and figure out somebody. But having said that, one important trick is you people need to learn to write. Talking doesn't cut it. Simple. Nobody cares. Praful has not come. Praful has not spoken to me. Praful writes it, it is there. And you send a registered letter. You send an email, you follow it up with a registered AD, speed post, and you get an indent, or you go to the office, get an indent, print and say that this is a letter that I've given. If they still don't give you information, then you have a cause. Then you have, but they will give. They have to give. And there is no privacy thing involved here. Why should privacy thing be involved here?
I'm not sure about that because
you write to them, you give me this information, but you say that this is what we're trying to help. What we would want. Can you kindly help us, direct us where the information is available?
Sure, definitely.
Another thing, what you can do quicker results is get into the farmers network themselves. They will have a network. You already have a WhatsApp group, right?
Yeah, but that is restricted to Mangalore area itself, and we have almost covered that area.
So which are the areas that you are wanting?
Like outside Mangalore, because how we covered Mangalore area was by talking to each and every farm, like going to their house, and then we get connected to someone else. So a lot of field work. But we were able to cover Bangalore. But outside Mangalore, we don't really have any other people that we
Udupi. But you know what? You should also try out if it's villages, you may have information at the panchayat level. What you should do is try and break it down into towns. You can break it down into villages, gram panchayat level, not villages, panchayat level, town, municipality, and the panchayat level. Shoot off letters to all of them. Get phones. Start picking. Start calling them. It should work. But don't talk only. It won't work properly. You have to write.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And write with a proper letterhead, a proper, it should look official.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Chihan and thank you so much.
Ma'am, before ending, so I would like to thank everyone for attending this meet, and thank you especially, ma'am, for having such a wonderful and insightful talk. So, I'll just propose the vote of thanks. I, on behalf of entire NASCOM Foundation Innovation Spaces, I would like to give a very hearty vote of thanks to you. So, you rightly mentioned about the linkage in almost every aspect which you covered to there. That linkage is something which connects all the pieces together, and that at the end of the day is something which can create an impact. So that will be the key aspect which all of us as the audience would be taking away from the session which you had. So yeah, thank you very much for.
Thank you. Thank you then.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, ma'am.